Welcome back to the Technology Hour, and I'm Ren, your host. We're talking today with Owen Fonorow. He is the founder and director of Vitamin C Foundation, and we're discussing Linus Pauling's research, and we kind of had to take a break there, so I'd like for you to continue the discussion.
Well, I was winding that up. Basically, just pointing out, and I want to give credit to Dr. Willis and the Canadian doctors in the 1950s who had almost had this answered and figured out, even though they, for some reason, I can't figure out, were ignored after this, other than the fact that maybe just vitamin C by itself did not reverse heart disease. In about a third of the patients it did, about the third were about the same, and then in a small group, about a third had some progression in plaque, and that wasn't considered, I guess, monumental enough. And then we can jump forward really until about 1989. Dr. Matthias Rath was on a team in Germany looking at the postmortem aortas, the thick artery that leads into the heart, and they discovered that there was a substance called lipoprotein small a that was the basic component of plaque, no LDL cholesterol, and this was what was forming the plaque. And Dr. Rath got the idea that there was also a connection with vitamin C. So he actually contacted Linus Pauling, went to his institute, and there they both came up with the theory that I'd like to talk about, and that is, at the bottom level, is that what we call heart disease is a form of scurvy. Now, scurvy, acute scurvy is what killed the sailors a long time ago, and we've got the limeys, the English taking limes to cure scurvy, and they discovered vitamin C. And that's the acute form will kill in 2 to 3 weeks if you don't have any vitamin C. But what Matthias Rath and Linus Pauling are saying is that what we call heart disease or cardiovascular disease is really a chronic, a slow, subclinical form of scurvy.
Wow.
And what they showed is that this lipoprotein small a has evolved in animals, the few animals, the guinea pig and humans, as a fruit bat and some higher order primates that don't make vitamin C in the liver. And in those species, they produce this lipoprotein small a in their liver, and what happens is the end result is instead of having a leaky arterial system, we have this plaque coating that acts like a plaster cast for our arteries. So they think it's an evolutionary, what they call a surrogate for vitamin C. If you have enough vitamin C, you can avoid the whole problem. But if you don't, then your lipoprotein A is going to form these plaques, and that's their basic theory.
As a way in which we've evolved lacking the vitamin C to stop our vessels from leaking.
That's it. You've got it right on the head, and that's exactly it. Now, what's interesting, and what Rath has said, and what I've been able to confirm, is that the kind of heart disease that we suffer, meaning human beings, is not generally suffered by any of the animals in the animal kingdom. And they all make their own vitamin C, and that's crucial to this theory. So there's two aspects of it. One, beings that aren't making vitamin C in their liver, and again, they make it in the amount of about 3 grams to 13 grams, 3,000 to 13,000 milligrams per day, and that goes directly into the bloodstream. And one of the things Pauling discovered on his own research at his institute was about half of what we take in by mouth is lost. So to get, let's say, 9 grams, that's why he took 18. And I'll just say that Thomas Levy recommends 6,000 to 12,000 daily as a preventive. So given that the animals that produce it don't get cardiovascular disease, and then if we talk about the cardiovascular disease in humans, it's not randomly distributed. We don't get it in the fingers and the ears and the nose and what have you. Whereas if there was a poison circulating in the blood, like a cholesterol, like a homocysteine, you would expect to get it randomly. But where we get it is, again, where the blood pressure is the highest, near the heart, where the force of the heartbeat is.
Where that would create the leaking vessels, and then, of course, our body makes, comes to the rescue with this lipoprotein to support the leak.
Exactly. So that's their basic theory. And again, like I said, the original people who kind of had the right idea, they didn't know about lipoprotein small a, were back in the 50s. So Pauling and Rath and earlier, and they were able to show they've got 3 United States patents for basically correcting and treating cardiovascular disease, formulas to treat cardiovascular disease with vitamin C and lysine, proline, substances like that. That it turns out there's something called a lysine binding site that medicine has discovered. And what it binds to, it doesn't bind to your artery if your artery's healthy. But if your artery suffers what's called a lesion or sore, a crack, then part of the collagen that's holding the artery together starts to stick out. And these are called lysol residues, and this lipoprotein A then sticks to it. So that's how the healing happens. You have to have the lesion first. And then you'll have, again, knowing, according to the video, that the lysine binding site, Pauling said that any physical chemist would say at once, well, what you want to do is increase the amount of lysine in your blood. And so I would never have thought of that. Thank God he's, two-time Nobel Prize winning chemist. And people who have watched the video and reporting back to us, this is stretching back to 1995, have had phenomenal results by taking very large amounts of vitamin C and lysine and proline and the other substances that Pauling recommended in his general writing, such as vitamin E, vitamin A, carnitine, and that type of thing. But the real crucial ones would be the vitamin C to produce the collagen needed to strengthen the arteries, and then the lysine and the proline are what they call lipoprotein small a binding inhibitors, and that would be what the terminology would be for the cure for heart disease, if Pauling is right. And we've looked through the literature. I'll be able to cite later the literature that supports it. There really is no literature that doesn't support it because they're not studying it. It's being ignored.
Now, of course, just for our audience that might not really know the scope of Linus Pauling's work, this is a lifetime of work, primarily, probably over at least, 30, 40 years. And his work was primarily with vitamin C, but he is known as a founding molecular biology as the science of it, and, of course, creating ultramolecular medicine.
Right. In fact, when you start trying to list his accomplishments, you can't do it justice. He was the premier chemist of the 20th century. He did invent basically modern chemistry, and his book on the nature of a chemical bond was what he won his first Nobel Prize for in 1954. What's very interesting is he probably was at retirement age before he found or learned about vitamin C. His interest in vitamin C happened in his 60s.
Oh, wow.
At that point, he became fascinated both first at vitamin B3, niacin, because it was being given to schizophrenics at very, very high doses with no known toxicity. And it was fascinating to him that you could give a substance that has such a powerful effect at a small physical dose, but you could take an enormous dose with no toxic side effect. And he found vitamin C was the same way, and he became fascinated by it.
Wow. And
he also was being told then by Erwin Stone that his health, he could live another 30 years. And so there's hope for everybody, even if you're in your 60s. He didn't start taking vitamin C until his 60s, and he lived to be till 92. And thankfully, I think the vitamin C had a lot to do with the research he was able to do for those 30 years.
Isn't that fabulous?
Yeah, primarily focused at vitamin C. So then, of course, he ran into what you run into when there are substances that cannot be patented, that are not going to make a great deal of money compared to prescription drugs. And, how do those substances get a fair shake in the so-called scientific journals when they may, interfere with an enormous amount of profit? That's what he ran into and he wrote about, and I've seen it firsthand. And those of us, I'm very appreciative to be on the radio now. It's a very rare that people, whoever is listening, will get information like this.
Well, that's why they do listen, because I try to bring out as many of these hidden, more obscure, actual founded bodies of information that people need to know about. So we're really happy to have you on the show.
I said I've got a lot to talk about. One of the interesting things that sticks in my mind, and we run a website called paulingtherapy.com, and this is to emphasize that the invention of Pauling and Rath, but we think that Pauling had to do with the dose, more to do with the high dose being recommended, We think that's why he did the videotape, because it does take 5 to 6 grams of vitamin C and lysine to get the kind of results.
How much of lysine?
Pardon me?
How much of the lysine?
Both of them, and again, this is on the video, but at the first time that it was tried, he recommended 5, and that worked for a while, then 6 grams of lysine, and the gentleman was taking 5 to 6 grams of vitamin C.
So you're making this available, the video, and we can order this video.
Right. Pauling Therapy, if you spell Linus Pauling, it's paulingtherapy.com. And that has all the information both on this theory, how to get the video. There's some products out there that already mixed. Because if you take a pill, it's quite a few pills every day. And so some people...
So you have this prepared already in a mix with everything.
That's right.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And what's that called?
It's Heart Technology by Tanner Laboratories. That's the one that we're pushing. I think there's other ones out there. They're all primarily about the same. You can get the basic ingredients. Again, the fact of having not to take so many pills and having it pre-mixed if you're trying to recommend it to somebody, not worry that maybe they're missing something.
Right.
So it's a good idea to get the formula. But if I may, I want to talk about just one case that I think is very, very important. And up on this website, paulingtherapy.com, you can click on the testimonials. And one of the there are lots of people there. And we almost didn't put it up because it's easy for anybody to sit down and write things. But people started to ask us, and we had all these things collecting, so we started to post them. And we tried to put their names and numbers, although putting people's names and numbers on the Internet is always not the wisest thing. But so people could call them and talk to these people who have reversed their major heart disease. And one of the ones that really sticks in my mind is a fellow named Jeff Fedelson, who was a veteran. And he was getting his heart care through the military, through veterans, for 10 years. And he had multiple heart attacks, multiple surgeries. And, he could hardly walk. He got to the point where he was on his deathbed, really. I mean, they had his daughter and his son drove overnight to be there, and they thought this time was it. And again, cardiology had 10 years to work on this fella. And what he did, and he made it through, and he got home, and he's sort of computer literate, and he says, there's got to be some other way. And he just typed something in, and he actually got Pauling Therapy. We talked, and he started taking that day 14 grams of vitamin C and 6 grams of lysine. And then his story's up there. And basically what he said, in 2 days he knew it was over. I mean, his heart disease was over. He didn't, and he's terrifically well today. We put a little video of what happened to him up there. But the reason this is important is because a lot of other people that we know might have tried some other alternatives. They might have tried chelation. They might have tried this fella. All he did was under the care of cardiology. Then he went straight to this Pauling Therapy at a really good dose.
Right out, 14 grams. That's high.
Well, he went to 14 grams of vitamin C. That is high. But he went to 6 grams of lysine, and those were the two. And that was, again, he told me in 2 days, people didn't recognize him in 2 days, in a week, and it just kept getting better and better from there. And that brings up another point. Doctors are taught, they're prescribing toxic substances, and therefore they are taught to give the smallest amount that gets the desired effect. And if they can't get the effect, then they up it a little bit because they know they could, cause some kind of damage. In these orthomolecular, what Pauling's talking about, vitamin C, lysine, no known toxic dose. It's the way to think about it is completely opposite. You should go up to the highest amount that you can take, and then you back off until the nuisance problems go away, maybe the loose stools or whatever. So it's a completely different paradigm that Pauling has brought to the world, where these orthomolecular substances. If you start way too low, in fact, that's been the problem with most of the science for vitamin C, and that Thomas Levy was able to identify completely. Any study that didn't show value of vitamin C had very, very tiny amounts. Every study that has had high amounts of vitamin C has shown enormous benefit. And so that's really the key here, is to proper dosing.
And these are in powder forms, of course.
Well, for the product that I was mentioning, but I think people, sounds like we're going.
Yeah, we're going. But we'll be right back, and we'll get to talk about that product. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back after a brief message.